Good morning, gang. Happy Thursday. Wanted to talk today about prepping in the suburbs. It's something I know well. I mean, for the most part, spent my entire life until we moved here living in the suburbs of many different cities. And a lot of times, prepper channels, including mine, kind of talk between living in the city and living in the country. And we kind of forget that middle ground of living in the burbs. The reason all of a sudden this topic came to the forefront for me is I got an interesting email yesterday, and I'll keep the person's name out of this so he or she does not get inundated, let's put it this way. But to give you the details, they live in the suburbs of Texas, of a city in Texas. And with everything going on at Texas, okay, red state Texas, granted it's got its patches of blue, Austin and Dallas and everything, but for the most part, pretty solid red state, regardless of what the left wants to tell you. But with everything that's been going on in the world the last few years, nobody's been able to miss the fact that, the wackos from California are moving to Texas, Idaho, and Tennessee in droves. And so what this person told me is that their nice little conservative neighborhood is now getting overrun by uber liberals who are moving into the neighborhood and trying to turn it into little Los Angeles, to the point where these people are now trying to create a mask mandate for the neighborhood. Okay, figure that one out, right? This is how unhinged the left is. Like, they think they have the authority to do something like that. Now, I don't know if it's an HOA or anything of the sort like that, but, there's no way in the world anybody's going to tell me I have to wear a mask to go sit on my front porch, okay? And I don't care if I live in New York City, I don't care if I live in Berwyn, Illinois, and I don't care if I live in Sharps Chapel, Tennessee, all right? Doesn't make a difference. Prepping in the suburbs is completely different from either city or country life. You've got a little bit of space, not a lot, okay? Most suburb lands are, maybe, a fifth of an acre, maybe a quarter of an acre. I think the house I had in Fort Wayne, Indiana, I think I had a third of an acre. When we were in Vegas, we had a ninth of an acre, postage stamp at that point. So, but you've got a little bit of land, as opposed to living in an apartment or something like that where you don't. So you have the ability to grow a small garden. You have the ability to have a little bit of your own personal security, that because you own this property, you can do something with it. Whereas, in an apartment, you really can't, all right? You can't put a fence up around your apartment. Most houses, if you want, you can put a fence up, or, if you're in an HOA that doesn't allow fences, where you can put up a row of bushes or, whatever would be to somewhat protect yourself. You can do all those things. But this email really brought to light the importance of us working together, like-minded people. And I'm not even necessarily saying preppers, okay? Because there's a whole lot of groups of like-minded people. You could say preppers versus non-preppers. You could say vaxxed versus non-vaxxed. You could say Republicans versus Democrats. You could say blacks versus Hispanics, whatever it would be. I mean, there's a whole lot of different ways you can make the like-minded people put together, if you will. But in this person's case, obviously the like-minded people here are going to be, for the most part, vaxxed versus unvaxxed. Okay. Now, you could also say it's going to be liberal versus conservative, whatever it would be. But the point is, this is when you need to start building community again. And I know this goes back to the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s. At least I can remember the 1970s. And I've told you guys the story before about, in the 70s, me living in the suburbs of Chicago as a kid. We'd go out and play all day. Mom never see us or whatever it is. Maybe we're at a friend's house or whatever. But somebody's parents knew all the kids and were always watching peeking out the kitchen window and making sure that, we weren't throwing gasoline balloons at each other or something like that. So, but that completely fell apart in the 80s. And I've told you that story about me being in the 80s and, now I'm a tween and then a teenager, and you couldn't find kids to go out and play because there wasn't a single kid that wanted to get away from their video games, and mom and dad had to drive them everywhere. So being neighborly disappeared in the 80s. And I've told you about me being in Vegas. I lived in that house for 2.5 years, and a person next door to me to the right side of my house, I literally talked to him one time, and that was to say hello when both of us were in the driveway. That was it. He was my neighbor for 2.5 years. Okay. But now getting to the point of starting to build those relationships again is imminently important. The thoughts that I had for the person who sent me the email was, okay, if this group of liberals is running around trying to get a poll to see if everybody wants to do a mandate, fight fire with fire. Put a meeting together, do it at, let's say you're in an HOA and you've got a community clubhouse. Do it there, okay? Do it at, the local McDonald's or whatever would be, if there's one up the street. Hell, have a barbecue, do it in your front yard, get some hot dogs out and say, hey, you know what, just want everybody to talk, get a few packs of hot dogs or whatever it is, and, a pony keg of beer, and you'll have a lot of people show up, trust me. Chance to talk to everybody and say, look, this is our neighborhood. We don't need to change it, okay? Start making plans, work with your neighbors. That's really part of prepping, okay, is building a mag. Now, I'm not saying in this situation that all your neighbors are going to be preppers. It's Texas, they're going to be armed, okay? But, they're not going to have food storage or whatever. Some may, who knows who you meet, okay? You may find out some of this sort of stuff, which is a good thing. But at least you have to have the common ground with people. That if there's 2 or 3 new neighbors in a subdivision of 50 houses that decide they want to have everybody masked, who the hell gave those 2 or 3 people the right to do it? They didn't. The other 47 or 48 can tell them to go pound sand, right? You want to run around your house masked? You want to drive in your car with the windows closed all by yourself with the mask on? You want to be that silly, go for it. Okay, that's your, deal. But you are not going to dictate to me what I have to do. Now, if that doesn't necessarily work, if you don't want to do something like that, well, now it comes time to get politically active. Again, if you've got an HOA, you need to be talking to the board of the HOA and say this stuff needs to stop, okay? Again, especially in Texas. But, in any state, it really doesn't matter. You can't supersede and have any authority over the law, all right? Texas has already come out and said no mask mandates. So the HOA can't go, you know what? We're more powerful than the governor of Texas. It just doesn't work that way. What are they going to do? Oh, like every other, and again, I'm using HOAs all the time because I can't think of any other way that something like this could be enforced. But, what are they going to, we'll put a lien on your house if you don't wear a mask. Good. Let's see how well that one stands up in court. Okay. You go ahead and try. I hate to tell some of these people, but HOAs can be sued, okay, by the people that live in the HOA. And when you do that, go try to explain to all your neighbors that their HOA fees are going up because the idiot who runs the HOA has to pay out from the HOA fees money to you because of a decision he made. It'd be very interesting, all right? But you don't want to get that far. But let's say you're not in an HOA, okay? Call the city council. Call the mayor. What's going on here? What gives these people the right to do something like that? They don't. That's the whole point, guys, right? But like anything else in this whole debacle that we've had over the last 18 months, if you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. We can't run away from everything. I know countless times, including myself, have said, get out of the cities, move to the country. Well, okay, that's just not realistic for a ton of people. Okay, you own a house or you have kids that are in school, and sure, why did you move to the suburbs in the first place? Because the schools were better than they are for the most part in the cities, and the schools are better than they are for the most part in the country, and you got kids. Okay, makes sense. You wanted, your house, as opposed to living in an apartment. You wanted a little bit less traffic, You didn't want to have to spend all day Saturday mowing the lawn, but you wanted to have a garden or somewhere for the kids to play. You wanted to have neighbors. That was the whole point. You get all these planned communities. I remember when I lived in Indiana, and I used to joke, I could literally experience my whole life without going more than 3 miles from my house. My job, the gas station, the grocery store, Walmart, my doctor, Home Depot, whatever, everything was within 3 miles of my house. I could literally, if I wanted to, ride a bicycle anywhere I needed to go. And that was it. That's why people moved to the burbs. I get it. Prepping is just a little different when you live there. And community in the burbs is so much more important than it is if it's important everywhere, but because that you are closer to everybody in the burbs, community is huge. So, for those of you guys who are experiencing something like this, please, please, please try your best to talk to your neighbors. It doesn't have to be about prepping, okay? It doesn't even have to be about politics. But when you get issues like this, it behooves you to stand up for what you believe in and not let yourself be run roughshod over by somebody who's standing up for what they believe in. I'll give them this, those people in this description. They're standing up for what they believe in. They're idiots, but they stand up for what they believe in. And it's time that we fight fire with fire and start doing the same. Have a good Thursday. Pinball out.